Hi. Now I'd like to show you some examples of some successful past student projects. Here, let me go to a full mode for the time and space assignment. And some of these are very simple and elegant. Others are a little bit more complex. We'll start with this project, which was a very simple photo collage project. She actually just took black and white photos. I believe these were photos that she made and substituted for the figure's head, she substituted this flower, therefore sort of manipulating space, bringing together this flower, which now becomes very oversized, into this other scene, really talking about the relationship of flowers and femininity and idealism. There's another one of these. Very simple, very elegant project. This student did light painting. I've had a lot of students do light painting. It is not as easy. It's a very easy process to get started on and to play with. It is not as easy to get really strong narrative results that have great composition. So I really love this one. They use these figures, and these action figures appeared to be sending out lasers or powers. So it had this strong narrative effect. I like the way that the light painting actually just lights up the figure a little bit. The background is blurred out with some shallow depth of field. Very simple, really fun. Here's some more light painting. This one is quite simple. I believe, I'm trying to remember if he used light painting or if he actually, I think with this one, he actually left the light still and shook his camera. It's so simple, and what it takes with a photograph like this is you make a whole lot of photographs, and most of them aren't very interesting at all, but there's one where the composition, everything comes together. So I really love this background, the foreground, the graphic quality of the lines. It's really beautiful. This photographer also did a more complex light painted scene. This is, did I get the right one? Yes, good. This is her kids at a gas station and had them pose and actually ran around them with a light painting with a flashlight and lit them up slightly with that. Really interesting. And we also have the trail of the cars behind. This photographer did double exposures in his camera. He brought this into an alternative class and we printed it on metal. We had a lot of fun with this photograph. So he juxtaposed this car coming towards us with the lilacs on the front, or the purple flowers on the front. So really played, this was done multiple exposure in camera. Here's another one of his that he did multiple exposure in camera, but in this case he did a long motion with one and kept the other exposure still. Oh, and this is also by the same photographer. This was taken from his car, and so the lights are not moving, but he's moving in the car, and he let his camera just jiggle in the car and created these really wonderful, did a long exposure and created these wonderful light paint. It's not light painting, but it's motion painting or long exposure. This is a light painting. This photographer, it actually took a few attempts to write a message on the wall. Very simple. I've had a lot of photographers, a lot of students work with writing letters or messages on the wall in light painting, and it can come out. It's not as easy to do as it sounds. Let's just say that. I like this because he actually went over it a few times. He created a strong composition. It has this really great quality of depth and interest. Here's another light painting with, I believe these are, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember what these lights are. These are alternative lights that she moved through the scene. This photographer actually had to take her kids on vacation while she was doing this assignment, and so she photographed them at this resort where they stayed. This is in the outdoor shower off area by the pool. And she did these super long exposures so that she set up her tripod so that the kids ran in for a second and then left, and they just look ghosted here. I especially love that she did this at this resort. You'll see the next one, because it actually is in contrast to, you know, the happy place of the resort. And there's this ghost of these children in the pool and at the showers. I really like these. Double exposure by a photographer. She took this up in Winters. So I like this one. She got the close-up of the flower and the back, the picture of the entire orchard, and laid those together. She also did, and you know what, I can't remember exactly how she did this. These are light painted, and wonderful outlines of these figures. And I'm trying to remember exactly how she did it. I think she went and painted them from behind with an iPhone on a color setting. This was, and I discourage you from this, but I think she might have done this with steel wool. Now, she lives on a big, large property in Winters with farmland, and she could do this fairly safely. It was pretty impressive. Again, I'm sort of discouraging you from that kind of material, but if you have a safe spot. This was another student who actually used this, did multiple exposures in camera of this figure. He changed the color of the light between exposures, really played with it a lot with this drawing tool. He was inspired, I believe, by Muybridge, who's in the reading. Another light painting, really fun, of the kids on the block. And this is a long enough exposure that you get a little bit of the scene around, but so you get that combination of the existing light and then the painted light. This is another one by that photographer of a blue Volkswagen in the garage, one of my favorites. Very subtle. This was actually done, it's not a technique that you saw in the slideshow of artists. This was done with by zooming the camera in during exposure with a long exposure, so it creates this really strange effect. Also playing with time and space and manipulation. And this same student did this very simple light painting that I loved, where she really mimicked wine falling into a glass, but it's with the light. This is light painting outdoors. She actually would go and stand in different areas and expose herself with a flashlight. Sometimes she's a little blurry, sometimes she's more frozen, very ghost-like and sort of creepy. So there she is 3 times in her pajamas. This is a very beautiful, simple, long exposure landscape from Twin Peaks in San Francisco. So you get this, what I really liked in this one was this very simple single car that's coming up at the front, as well as the long trails in the background. So this is a long exposure of a scene with traffic, which creates those light trails. This is actually light painting in a different way by using just a very large light. It can be a big flat flashlight or a floodlight, and just by literally painting in the light into the trees. Gives this sort of very strange, creepy effect. Best done when it's really, really completely dark outside. This is actually motion in the camera, I believe, doing a zoom. And this is multiple exposure in camera. She actually had the capability of doing 5, and she photographed a child who's a friend of hers. And some long exposures, landscapes. Another super long exposure. Now this was this student turned in one photograph for her assignment, and she got a very high grade. This was the only photograph. It took her several different takes to do it. So this is a single exposure in camera. She stayed still. She set up the remote, and she had her husband, who is the subject there, come in and out of the scene and reposition himself once. And so he has this ghost-like effect. She was there the whole time, so she is solid. Really great photograph. Now, this student did a conceptual project. She was influenced by John Stezeker. She photographed some of the parents that she knew through the school where her kids go to school. She photographed their children first, then went and photographed the parents. And so she photographed the children, she made the photographs, she cut them in half, and then she took them back and put them on the parents' face and photographed them together. Really interesting project. Pretty labor intensive. You'd need to have access to some place to print the photos in order to do this, but you might think of something else that's very imaginative. This is double exposures in camera. And what I like about this next one, I think you can't see it as well in this one, but this is my favorite. She actually turned the camera upside down and re-exposed it. So she gets this wonderful sort of mirror chaotic scene. And this last one is one of my favorites. It may not aesthetically be exciting, but it was so interesting conceptually. I really love this photograph. So there's these two. So this is an old school. It has an archive. It has in the school, it has an archive of the students that attended there decades and decades ago. And so this photographer went into the archives, made a photograph of the photograph in the archives, and then went outside immediately and photographed the school. So he has laid those two things together within a time frame. And there's another one where he photographed them out on the grounds and then went back outside. So this is really a rephotography project where he's actually going back out and photographing them in the scene where they were photographed inside. Really great work. Okay, those are the student examples. I hope these are inspiring. If you have questions about any of them, be sure to send me an email or a message and or post in the discussion group, and I'm happy to clarify and talk to you about those different techniques. I'm also going to post several videos that I found on how to do some of these techniques. But you're also free to figure out your own stuff. The last presentation for this time and space are the 3 videos that I've posted of the stop motion. Please go to that page next. There's a link on the week size on the week page, on the page from the week. Go there and watch those 3 videos. They're about 5 minutes long each, and then go to the discussion and we'll get talking about it and get you going on your project. Take a break first, go watch the videos, then come back. Okay,